It happens every year. We evaluate quarterbacks. There becomes this groupthink mentality of a factor that we get all excited about. And then 3-5 years down the road, we're dead wrong. But we never self-scout. We never check ourselves on the factors of where we were wrong when we evaluate these quarterbacks. But we do it every single year. And so in today's video, I want to dive into when we are wrong, inevitably wrong about these quarterbacks. This is the one factor about each of those quarterbacks that we're going to be wrong about. So it's the factor that we either are overestimating or underestimating with each of these quarterbacks. Let's get into it. Let's start with Shedeur Sanders, the biggest name of the quarterbacks in this draft. When we're wrong about Shedeur Sanders, and it's always weird because Shedeur is about to be a top 5 pick, so being wrong, like, I don't even know if that's the right way to word it. But if Shedeur is 5-7 years down the road, a perennial Pro Bowler and competing for Super Bowls, and we underestimate how good he is going to be in the NFL, the factor that we are putting too much light on right now is this fact that he doesn't have an elite trait. That's a convenient talking point. It sounds good when you say, hey, you got to compete with the Patrick Mahomes and the Lamar Jacksons and the Josh Allens of the world. That sounds great. But oh, by the way, there's this other lane that just happened where the Eagles have Jalen Hurts. He's not an elite quarterback, but he just won the Super Bowl. And the Super Bowl is the ultimate goal. So over there, you're sitting there and saying, hey, there's a B+ A-level quarterback who just won a Super Bowl. The reality is, and I fall into this trap too, you don't have to have a Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, or Lamar Jackson. Sure, that is ideal. Sure, that's what you want to do in the draft. Sure, that means that you are going to have a more likely chance to continuously be in the playoffs and be competing for conference title games. But you don't have to have a alien type quarterback. And so for Shedeur, the factor that keeps coming up is, oh, he doesn't have this elite trait. Well, look at some of the all-time quarterbacks in recent memory. Tom Brady, a Drew Brees. To a lesser extent, but he's been one of the most consistent quarterbacks in the NFL over the past decade, Kirk Cousins. I think you can win a Super Bowl with Kirk Cousins pre-Achilles injury, but there was a path to get it done. Those quarterbacks don't necessarily have an elite trait. The pushback with that comment might be, oh, well, Drew Brees had elite anticipation and Tom Brady had elite intangibles and whatnot, and the leadership component. I'd make the argument that for a college quarterback, Shedeur has elite anticipation. And his moxie and leadership, 5, 7, 10 years down the road, we might look at it as, man, we underestimated how much swagger, how much confidence that, Shedeur really had that it factor to change a franchise. So to me, if all the Shedeur haters 5-7 years down the road, if he's one of those guys that's one of the staples at the quarterback position in the National Football League, this whole doesn't have an elite trait is getting way too much chatter about. For Quinn Ewers, and this is honestly the guy that popped to my mind and why I wanted to make this video, when we are wrong about Quinn Ewers, or when I'm wrong, because I have Quinn Ewers as my quarterback 5 in the draft right now, we fast forward 5 years and Quinn is a starter in the NFL. When we're wrong, it will be because we underestimated his mental toughness and mental resilience. This is a kid who has been like the chosen one, coming from South Lake Carroll, big time quarterback recruit, goes to Ohio State, leaves high school early, which that's a whole nother mentality that a lot of the guys in this draft haven't even touched on in terms of the pressure and having to deal with that pressure and expectations from a young age. Then goes to Texas, and we do not give enough credit to how he handled that Arch Manning situation. That as a dude who was in a bunch of quarterback competitions, who had to play with a short leash, and that internal feeling of, man, I'm having to look over my shoulder. And everyone tells you, don't look over your shoulder. And everyone says, hey, if you're that confident as a quarterback, you shouldn't have to worry about the guy right behind you. But it's human nature, and we're all human beings. And I never had to compete with a guy like Arch Manning, or with the name Arch Manning. I had a Sam Darnold right behind me, but Arch Manning, I mean, the pressure and the expectations and the chatter and all the social media buzz that comes from having a guy like that right behind you. And oh, by the way, he did get benched mid-season versus Georgia for Arch Manning, and then gets put back into the game, has to continue to be the leader of that team. Just, that is not a tough position to be in, playing with that short of a leash. No matter, Sark will never say he played with a short leash, but we all know the realities of that situation. It is a lot easier to play the quarterback position in college when you're at, a mid-tier school and you're back up, there's no way, even if I throw 3 or 4 picks this game, there's no way I'm going to get benched. Quinn Ewers did not have that luxury. Quinn Ewers had to go out and show out every single day, every single half. And if he had a bad half of football, he would have got benched. And oh, by the way, and it's come out more, the past couple months, but played the majority of last season with a torn oblique muscle. So you have the short leash mentality and Arch being right behind you, and you're injured, which I remember when I was battling with Sam Darnold, I rolled my ankle mid-August or early August when we were in the heat of a quarterback competition. Rolled it bad. Had to spat the whole deal. It was gnarly there for a couple days, but I knew if I sat out in the heat of fall camp when I'm battling with Sam Darnold, I would lose that quarterback competition. That would have been just a convenient way to say, it's a bummer. Max got banged up and he rolled his ankle, and you know what? Sam just took the reins and, never looked back. I'm sure Quinn had some of that thought process of, I got the oblique injury, and I know he sat out for, what was it, a game or two? But that's just a tough situation to be in. And that whole factor, that whole mental resilience is a factor I think we're underestimating. When Quinn gets to the NFL, it wouldn't surprise me if 5 years down the road, he looks back and says, there was more pressure being the starting quarterback at Texas with Arch right behind me than getting a few starts his rookie year for the Giants, so to speak. Sounds crazy. I know New York's the Giants, but I think the way that Quinn handled that with the consistent production over multiple years is not insignificant. And when I myself am wrong here in 5 years, and if Quinn's a starting quarterback in the NFL, this will be the factor we look to. For Cam Ward, if we look back in 5 years and he's not a starter for the Titans or the Browns or whoever takes him, or if he's somehow not in the league, why will that have been the case? What factor are we not seeing right now? And to me, it's this whole idea of like the one-hit wonder season. And I know right away I'm gonna get pushback on that verbiage because Cam's had success at multiple stops along his college career. He's had success across multiple years, but there's been levels to it. Incarnate Ward's obviously, a different level of college football. And the reason I say this factor is I called Cam Ward's game in 2022. So I've seen the climb of Cam Ward, and I can remember the conversations of, hey, well, he's having to get comfortable in the system, and he's good with these concepts, but he's having to grow with these concepts, and we're having to rein in his decision making, and he's having to grow here and grow there. And the reality is we haven't had that conversation with Shedeur. I think Shedeur adapted to not only college football, but the jump from Jackson State to Colorado. That jump was more seamless for a guy like Shedeur, and it wasn't for Cam. If you follow my content, I've kind of said the inverse of that of, Cam's only played, real quarterback for 5 years or so, right? He was playing in a wing tee or veer offense in high school. So that growth, I think, is fair, is normal, and shows the fact that he does have a high upside. But if we're wrong here in 5 years, I think it's because we're looking at more of kind of this, he lit the world on fire in 2024, similar to what like Kenny Pickett did his last season at Pitt, similar to what, Zach Wilson did at BYU. Zach Wilson, I remember those early days of him being the young gunslinger, and they're trying to rein him in, and then it all kind of fell into place his senior year, and you're like, sweet, that's why we need to take him, Jets. That's why they did take him. But then looking back, it's, maybe we did kind of buy into this one-hit wonder season, so to speak. And again, not saying Cam had the one-hit wonder season like Anthony Richardson's another guy that comes to mind. I mean, he literally only had one season. But I guess my point is, this time last year, if you had surveyed draft people about who would you rather take, Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, coming off the last season of the OG Pac-12, I think the vast majority would have said Shedeur Sanders. I think it would have been 75% Shedeur, 25% Cam, maybe even 80-20. And the reason is because Shedeur has consistently played at this really high level for multiple seasons and backed it up in 2024 versus Cam. It was this growth process, right? It was him having to get comfortable in his own skin and get comfortable at Washington State and get comfortable in these progressions, and then goes to Miami, which, trust me, that's not easy to do, a different program. And I think that is a legitimate positive factor. But Miami is a school that has better roster than almost every single team they're lining up against. It is playing with 4- and 5-star guys that you pluck from the portal and big time talent around you. Maybe that taps into a level of comfort for Cam where he doesn't feel like he needs to be Superman on every single play. He did make Superman throws, but what happens when that mindset's no longer, I clearly have a better roster than the team I'm playing. In fact, I'm going to the NFL where my roster is significantly worse than maybe most teams that I'm playing. Hence why I'm going to be the number 1 or number 2 pick. So my point is, are we putting too much focus on just the 2024 season and not paying attention to, well, the reality is Shedeur has done this more consistently at a higher level over the past 2 to 3 years than Cam has done. On that note, good little through line to the next guy for Tyler Shuck. I mean, good for him for doing his thing, but the fact that we're coming out of the NFL Combine thinking about, does Tyler Shuck become a first-round quarterback? He has earned the right to get drafted. He should get drafted. He should get a look in the NFL. He is not a first or second round quarterback. And similar to kind of what I'm saying with Cam, Tyler Shuck, it took him a while to get going in college football, which, hey, hey, good for him for staying the course. And ultimately, it did come to fruition for him. But as a guy who it did take a while for me to get going in college, and I played with guys like a Sam Darnold or a Kenny Pickett that did not have that learning curve. And I think that's a big reason why they both are still NFL quarterbacks, and they both had very successful college careers. And those were first round guys because they didn't need that warm up period. They didn't need that, let me get acclimated to college football. And you might push back and say, oh, Maxwell, you're being critical. You got to give guys time to grow. The reality is, like, if you're really that dude, if you're really a first round quarterback or second round quarterback, if it does take you years and years, the dude's 25 years old. If it takes you that long to have things really settle into place, and I know he had injuries and maybe not the best rosters at a school like Texas Tech, but I just think back to the OG days when he was at Oregon, those first 3 years, there was an element of, hey, they're having to protect him with the play calling and whatnot. And for me, big time quarterbacks, yes, there's room to grow, but you shouldn't have to do that. That would give me concern. He deserves to be drafted, but he's not a first or second round guy. For Jackson Dart, when we're wrong, and if he's a starter in the NFL for 7 years and it's looking back like, man, how did he slip through the cracks, man? He played a ton of football. People were super excited about him as a true freshman at USC, then goes to Lane Kiffin's offense at Ole Miss and is super productive there. Like, how did we miss on that? And I think it's similar to Shedeur in that there's not this elite trait that just wows you and it's like, we have to have this guy. But I also think subconsciously he falls into this, oh, he played in an RPO spread offense, much more of a college offense. How does that translate? When we are wrong, I think that subconscious thought, we are putting too much emphasis on that. I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but when you think RPO offense, you think, hey, it's the reads are made for me. And it's very cookie cutter. It's, hey, I'm reading one defender. If he goes here, I throw there. And it's, it's almost like that Bryce Petty conversation at Baylor where it was like, hey, he can sling the rock, but his offense is so dumbed down. How does that translate to the NFL? When we're wrong, I think it's because we're not giving credit to the fact that Jackson Dart, yes, he's playing in that offense, but you turn on that film, he's consistently throwing guys open. So yes, the ball's telling me to go here, but I'm throwing guys off of leverage this way. And I'm anticipating throws into this open window that you can't see now, but when you give it that extra beat, I'm able to throw guys in there. And I think the level of NFL worthy throws that he's making on a consistent basis is more than maybe he gets credit for. And this dude can make every single throw. For Kyle McCord, it's the same thing as Quinn Ewers. It's the mental toughness and it's the resilience. To go from Ohio State, where people are ragging on you for being a game manager, kind of get taken away from that program. I think he definitely would have wanted to stay if they said, all right, you won us double-digit games, you're our guy, we're going to stick with you. To transfer, to bet on yourself and go to Syracuse, because from what I understand, he could have gone to a more blue blood program for more money, but he decided to go to Syracuse, bet on himself, knowing that Syracuse was going to be a program where he would have the keys to the car and they would need him to produce at the quarterback position to have success, rather than if you go to a bigger school, they might put pieces around you and you might not be able to show your full skill set. He bet on himself. He had a chip on his shoulder. He went and backed it up. Oh, by the way, while he's having to watch his team win a national championship, that's tough. I think the whole toughness side for Kyle McCord, if he's a starter in the NFL 5 years from now, it's going to be because of this. You guys know where I stand on him. He's my sleeper of this draft. I've been saying that for 4 or 5 months. Syracuse rolled out the ball every single week and said, Kyle McCord, go win it for us. There are very few quarterbacks in this draft that you can say that about. For Jalen Milroe, in 5 years, if we look back and he's a starter in the NFL and one of the most scary and dangerous weapons in the NFL, it's going to be because we underestimated his athleticism. There is levels to the whole dual threat conversation. And you guys might hear me say that and say, Max, what are you talking about? We all know that Jalen Milroe is a dynamic athlete. If it does work out for him in the NFL at quarterback, I don't think we're giving his legs enough credit. And the example, or where my mind goes, is like Anthony Richardson. We said he was the best athlete to ever enter the NFL, or at least the best combine athlete. But I would argue that defensive coordinators, when they're preparing for Anthony Richardson, they have to obviously account for his legs. And on third down, there's a quarterback spy and whatnot. But I would imagine most defensive coordinators in the NFL kind of take the mindset of, oh, if Anthony Richardson's legs beat us, they beat us. We'll have to live with it if they do. But for Jalen Milroe, his legs are so dynamic and he's so twitchy, you have to account for them on every single play. First, second, and third down. And it's not just a, hey, we'll live with it kind of thing. No, it's a, hey, we're creating a whole new practice period or two during the week to account for the fact that we're playing Jalen Milroe. Similar to how you're handling it with Lamar Jackson. I don't think he's as twitchy as Lamar, but he's more powerful, which to me in the tight red zone adds another layer that Lamar doesn't have as much. That's splitting hairs though. Don't just clip that one segment. But point being, Jalen Milroe, starter in the NFL 5 years from now, we're going to be looking back like, yeah, this guy's legs are next level. Like, why did we not take him first round? And again, I think he should have gone back to school. I think he could have played his way or developed his way as a passer to a first round quarterback. I don't think he's there yet. I think he has to get to the right situation, but he is next level dual threat. For Will Howard, if we're wrong about him in 5 years and he's a starting quarterback in the NFL, it will be because we underestimated his mobility. And I'm hand up, I'm the guy that's saying I don't think his mobility translates to the NFL. He's a big guy, don't get me wrong, but I just don't think he's as dynamic as he needs to be with running the football for it to be like a real part of his game at the next level and as the athletes get better. But as I'm saying that, and again, if we are wrong, I think it'll be because he has a little bit of a Josh Allen feel to his mobility. Maybe not so much in the like design run game that Josh has when it is third and short and they're going like off tackle QB run game, but more so how, you know, Josh's legs are such a factor on like third down passing game. You're not necessarily going to allocate a spy to a guy like Will Howard. And if you don't do that and your defensive ends get upfield and there's rush lanes, Will Howard's legs could be a real factor. And again, if he is a starter in 5 years, you can clip this. I think that's the factor that we, myself, are underestimating. I love breaking down QBs, man. It's fun having this, you know, this process of it's almost like a little scorecard where you're saying, all right, I think this guy's going to make it. I think we're underestimating this factor. I think we're overestimating this factor. And then internally for me, you can kind of self-scout 3 to 5 years down the road, which is why I made this video. If you like this topic, let me know down below in the comments. Let me know which takes you disagree with as well, because we covered a lot. But like this video and subscribe to the channel as well. Coming out with football content every single day. Thanks for hanging, guys.